I am Candace Harris from BoardGameGeek. I'm here with Ross from Alley Cat Games. We'll be taking a look at Tungaru. Hey Ross, how's it going today or this evening?
It's going great. Thank you.
It's been a long weekend. Good, good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
All right. So Lincoln's got this beautiful game set out on the board. Can you give us an overview of Tungaru, what it's all about, what players are doing, etc.?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, Tungaru, or Tungaru as I call it. Oh, I'm British, so pronunciation.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's choose these diverging paths. So it's a seafaring game where you're spreading culture around an archipelago of islands. So it's kind of set in an era where these islands are just initially getting settled, and it's the kind of game where you're traveling around on these boats, which you can see on the board, and you'll be, attracting new nomads to your tribe. You'll be putting monuments towards your culture on there. You'll be trading goods. You'll be settling on those islands. But to talk in board game mechanics, it's a dice placement Euro, which is 2 to 5 players, takes about 60 to 90 minutes. And that's like a broad overview of what you're doing. So you're traveling around different islands, trying to attract these nomads who'll score you points. And the tribe that you create towards the end of the game, that's how you're going to win or lose the game.
Awesome. And maybe we could take a look at a sample turn, or do you want to tell us what some of the actions are in a little more detail?
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll kind of break the board. I'll break the game down into its main parts, right? So you can see this big, beautiful board that Andrew Bosley did the illustration for. Andrew Bosley, you might know through games like Everdell and Tapestry and et cetera, et cetera. He's a very talented guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this game board in the middle is where the nomads live, where your boats will be moving around. This is where you'll be placing your dice. The dice will be on the boats themselves, and you'll be, making your worker placement kind of style things from there. You've also got a culture board that each player has, and that's where the nomads will come, and that's where they'll become part of your tribe. You'll gain perks from them. Your monuments live on those culture boards, but you've also got and you'll keep resources on the right-hand side on the track, but you've also got a handful of cards, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. And each turn, the way it works is you're going to roll some dice. You'll be using 3 dice. They'll go onto the boats. Everyone follows the leader's dice, and that'll determine what you can do that turn. Then you're going to choose a leader, one of these cards, and you'll play that in secret, flip it, and that'll provide you with like an additional action and an immediate effect. And then you'll be performing your actions around the board. So I guess the easiest thing probably to do at this point is, Lincoln, if you want to grab 3 dice and give them a roll, maybe that'll get us going.
Cool. And Ross, do all the players have the same hand of those leader cards to choose from?
They do, yes. So what's interesting about the leader cards is you all start with exactly the same cards, but each round you'll be playing one and you'll be flipping it, you'll be using that leader card, and once that round's complete, you pass that leader card you've used to the left. It goes clockwise around the table. So your hand of leader cards will be changing based on what actions have been done. So it might be there's something you want to do this turn, but next turn, you might want to hold off doing it because you don't know exactly what cards you might have. If you give away all those cards that are important to the actions you want to do or the perks you need right now, then that'll affect, the interaction that you have. So it's something to think about. You don't have a set hand of cards. So those dice, Lincoln, if you want to place them onto one of the boats, maybe the yellow boat on the right-hand side, I suppose, because that's the one that matches the color. All the other players at the table, regardless of player count, they would do the same. All of their dice would match whoever was the leader in that particular round, which would be like the first player token. One of the cards that you get in your leader hand of cards is to take that leader token for you. So you would roll the dice, you would determine everyone would be following your step. Once you've got all the dice rolled, that is when you would be choosing your actions. So there's a bunch of different actions that you can take. And on your culture board at the top of it, it actually shows you what all of those different actions are. So I've got my culture board in front of me, this one right here. So what you can do is you can sail, you can move around the board, going to different places. It looks like it's in German. So Stegeln, I suppose, would be sail in this case. There we go, the way around. Thank you very much. So that is how you move the boat around the board, and moving 2 spots over is free, but moving further costs fish. That's the currency of how you would pay that. on the actual culture board itself, you can see there's 6 actions in this game, 6 main actions: sailing, harvesting, settling, trading, traveling, and recruiting. And they all have different benefits. So sailing is, if you just move that away, Lincoln, for a second. If you see on the board, it's a little bit harder to see at a distance, but if you see on the board, there's these piers that come out next to where the boat is, or next to where all the boats are. They're the islands that you can access with where your boat is at the minute. You're basically parked up at a jetty, and you're going to stroll out onto that island, and this is where you perform your actions. So at a certain point, you're going to need to move to be able to perform actions on different islands. But if you bring the culture board back in, Lincoln, I'll tell you about some of the rest of them. So there's harvesting, and each of the different islands, they have their own particular good that you'll be able to harvest from those islands. And you can use the harvest action to gain the good from that island. It is based on the numerical value of your die that you're using. Some islands will have certain values on them and certain goods on them. So that's how you're gaining different goods. You can settle, and that's a way of how you're placing. You have 3 settlers in this game, and that's a way you can place a permanent settler on an island. But they can all, I say permanent, they can also travel, they can move, but that's an extra worker for you that allows you to do more actions. On the bottom, you can trade. So each island has their own ability to trade certain goods, which is shown on the island tile itself, or the island section of the board. And that is a way of you exchanging certain resources for other ones. So that's another action you can do. You can also travel. So your settler can decide to move to another island, which means they can do their settler actions there. And you recruit, and each island has a nomad on it. And the nomad tiles give you endgame scoring, give you maybe new resources, maybe a new power. And they're people that you want to attract to this culture board. You can see at the bottom with this little silhouette of a person. That's where those nomads would go, and they would give you additional benefits along the bottom of the board. And that's kind of like a whistle-stop tour of the board itself. You can see on the board the top actions require dice, the bottom actions. You can also use settlers to do that. So getting a person onto an island gives you some of the actions, but not all of them. And let's go ahead and just kind of like have a turn, I suppose. So yeah, we'll ignore game setup, I suppose. But normally the way game setup works is what everyone would do individually is they would all reserve a nomad. So the nomads are these square tiles you can see on each island. They're the different people you're trying to attract. And what you would do is you would take one of your monument tokens, they're called, which is, in your case, Lincoln, one of these little flat yellow tokens that you've got on that player board. And you would decide which one you want to put. So the left-hand track on your culture board that you showed us earlier, that is like a resource track. And the further you get along that track, the more resources you gain. And you can see that on the board. It's like when you get to a certain spot, you'll go from top to bottom and it will reveal a fish, then it will reveal coconut, then it will reveal a shell. On the right-hand side, you've got where you store your resources. And at the start of the game, you get one of each, but there's a limit to how much you can store, with your particular tribe. So one of the ways you can use a monument token, which Lincoln's put as a reservation on one of those nomads, is by unlocking a larger storage area. You've also got the central part that Lincoln pointed out, which is where all your nomads can sit. And you'll need to place monuments onto islands to have more space for more nomads to join your tribe. But in terms of actions, let's go ahead and just choose one of the actions. So to start with, probably what you'd want to do is you'd probably want to attract a new person to your tribe. So we'll need to have a little bit of a closer look at that tile, Lincoln, if you don't mind, because there's some information on all of these tiles, and I'll give you the anatomy of the nomad tiles so you can kind of understand what's going on. So all of the nomad tiles are broken into 3 parts. The top part is the cost, and the cost of how much it is to attract this individual to join your tribe. In this case, coconuts and pearls, that's what that individual's looking for. If you can give them those resources, they'll go, all right, I'll join with you. There's a individual kind of unique power or scoring mechanic that's in the middle. So this particular nomad, if they're part of your culture, part of your tribe, if you use one of your dice and you place it on that, then you can, I can't see what it is underneath that. I think it's one of the resources, but it's disappeared because of the sharing on the screen. It's see-through. So I'm going to assume it's a particular color.
That's a fish.
That's a fish. Okay, yeah, perfect. It's because it's blue, it's going straight through. That's fine, don't worry about it. I can see the outline now. Thank you very much. So that's an ability for you to sell fish via this person to gain points. So there are ways to gain points in the here and now. And then at the bottom section of the Nomad tile, there's end game scoring. So, there's points that you'll gain in the game and there's points you'll gain at the end of the game. But if you pop that individual back on the island, Lincoln, let's go ahead and figure out how we would gain them. So I think, they've got coconut and pearl is what they're looking for?
Yeah.
Coconut and shells, yeah.
Coconut and shells, thank you very much. So what you would do is you would
pearl.
use
pearl.
one of
sorry.
your...
Yeah, it's pearl.
You would use one of your dice and you would place that on one of the 3 available spots in the bottom right-hand corner of the island you're looking at. There's 3 spots there and you place one of the dice anywhere in there, it's fine. And you would use that, and that's you using the action of recruiting someone. To recruit someone, what you would do is you have to pay the cost that that particular nomad's looking for. In this case, like I said at the start, everyone would start with one of each resource. So in this case, Lincoln, you would have a fish, you'd have a shell, you'd have a pearl, you'd have a coconut on the right-hand side of your culture board. And that would be how it would begin. So you'd look at what resources you have available and you'd be looking to gain that person to your tribe. So in this case, if their cost is a shell and a coconut, if you're wanting to bring that person over, that's what you can do. You can throw that back into the supply. I'm making you pick things up and put them straight back where you got them from. I apologize. And then that nomad will join your culture board and they'll go onto your culture board, which is now unlocked a new ability you can choose to use to sell things for points. But at the end of the game, you'll also score points for how many monuments you've placed around the different islands. So in the particular case of this individual, at the start of the game, that would have had a little reserve token on it that you wouldn't have had to have used, but it's kind of way of you, out in England, we'd call it bagsying something, like you're saying that's going to be mine. And in this case, let's say, for example, Lincoln, if you want to take one of the 2 which are the flat tokens on your culture board from the nomad position and put that into the top right of the island, and that'll be you putting a monument onto that island. You can only put 1 monument on each island, but that's a way of now you've unlocked more space on your culture board, and that's a way of you increasing the size of your tribe. If it's ever full, what you can do is you can just move one of the ones that were on your board to the top right of your culture board, to the traveler space. They're off on a wander somewhere. You can't use their central power anymore, but the endgame scoring will still apply. Let's go ahead and do another action then. On the location of your board, and I'm going to try use my eagle eyes here. I can see that, let's say for argument's sake, Lincoln, you had a coconut as part of your resources. I'm kind of cheating a little bit here, but bear with me to give this example. You can see on the board, there's the ability to trade goods, and that's in the bottom left of the island you're on. And it allows you to trade one of a particular resource for something else. So if you place that in the little spot to the left of there, and there's 2 little circles to the left of it, yeah, and that means then you'll swap that for something else. So every island has a different resource that you're able to trade, and that's something that you'd be thinking about when you're looking to get the different nomads. What do they need right now? What am I going to need to be able to gain them to my tribe? So in this case, you've traded coconuts, and what's it showing there that you get in return? Okay, you get them and you put them into your resource section on the right-hand side of the board, 2 shells. Another action you could do later on, and you would place a die on one of those 3 spots, one of the yellow die from the boats, and you place it in one of the 3 spots to do that trade action, because largely speaking, everything in this game requires a dice to be able to do it. Another action you could take, and we won't bother using a dice for this, but let's imagine someone else placed the dice in the same way. They could use the trade action, but instead of doing a swap, they're just going to go ahead and take that resource you've just put on the island, the coconut. So they're not trading something, they're just gaining something. What you could choose to do is you could choose to settle on that island. So to settle on that island, you've got these little yellow screen printed meeples on the right-hand side, Lincoln, yeah. So on the left-hand side of the board, there is these little spots where you can settle onto islands. So you can see there's 3 places in a 4 to 5 player game. There's another side of the board that's 2 to 3 player game, and that would mean there's different amounts of those settler spaces. That settler will allow you. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Hello?
sorry to cut you off there. I was just going to ask a question. So if there were 2 resources on the island, would the purple player who came in be able to take both of them?
Just the
Or do you only
just the
take
one.
one?
So you're gonna you're
Just one.
just gonna
Okay.
choose the one to take. Sorry, I'm
And if-
really rattling through this as fast as possible.
No, it's great. It's great. I love it.
You got if you got any questions, obviously, just interrupt me. I beg of you.
Okay. Okay, I have one or two more maybe. Also, like along with the trading, if both of those resource slots are filled, can players no longer trade there pretty much for the turn?
Correct, yeah. And
Okay.
one thing you notice now in this current example, the yellow and the pink die have filled those 3 spots on the board. So now you wouldn't be able to do a lot of stuff on that location because those places are full. But remember, your boat is connected to 2 different locations, and you do have the ability to sail somewhere else on your turn. So, you do have the option to do something along those lines. One thing, obviously, that I've skipped ahead of is you'd be choosing one of these leader cards, these large tarot-sized cards that are off to the right-hand side. And so part of your turn would be you'd roll these dice, you'd place these dice, and you would have played one of these cards. I've kind of skipped that just to show you an example of some of the play on the board. But if you want to go ahead and grab some of those cards, Lincoln, we'll have a little look at them and maybe just grab just 1 or 2 of them. We can kind of break them down, much like I did the rest of it. So you've got 1 to 5 cards. They all have a little different ability to them. And each round you'll be playing one of these. In the bottom of the card, the top part of the card is just a nice piece of artwork. The bottom part of the card is what you can actually do with this card. So all of the leaders have a left-hand column, which allows you to gain a resource if you place a dice of that value or values onto the card, and that's how you can gain that resource. So your worker, they allow you to gain pearl or shells, depending on which dice you place on them. And then on the right-hand side, for all of the leaders, they all have basically an instant effect. In this case, the worker gains you an extra dice that turn. And that dice you can use on whatever actions it is that you're doing. And you'd place that onto the card rather than onto the boat. And that, in this case, that would be, if you play the worker to gain an extra dice and you'd place it on that little plus dice spot on the board, Lincoln, in the top right. So then you'd be like, okay, I've got a 6. I can use that for something on this particular turn. And then in the bottom right, there's like a perk or an ability. In this particular case, this one is allowing you to recruit nomads this is actually saying when you trade, you're going to get double the goods. You're going to get more for trading. The worker's really good at collecting all these resources, so you can get more. If you want to throw another card in there, I'll kind of show you another example of another card, Lincoln. All right, so we've got a beggar. A beggar's an interesting card here. Again, on the left-hand column, they can gain resources that see through fish and the coconut. And on the right-hand side, they've got the ability that they'll be asking for goods from other people. So to the left and the right, they'll be saying, well, I'm here and I need something from you. They'll gain points for it. They'll gain 3 points. That little brown circle indicates they'll be gaining points for giving something generously to the beggar. But the beggar can't beg from another beggar. So if someone else next to you plays another 2, you can't take any goods from them. And you can't also beg from the chief, which is the card that's number 5, the one that takes the first player token. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's an ability which shows you that you are able to recruit nomads at a slightly lower cost. So you can get people to your tribe a little bit cheaper. So it depends if you're thinking this round, I'm actually going to want to recruit some nomads. Maybe you want to play the beggar because that'll make it a little bit cheaper for you. Let's have a look at another card if you don't mind, Lincoln. All right, so we've got the chief. So the chief has the ability to gain a lot of fish. So, it might be that the dice get rolled before you choose these leader cards. So you might see the dice that have been rolled and there might be a number 1 there. And you might think, well, actually, I want some fish because I'm thinking about settling my little settler meeples on one of these islands. It normally costs 2 fish. So if I get the chief, I can use the dice, get some fish, and I'll be able to do that. So again, that's the left-hand column resources you can gain if you spend a dice on it. The top right is saying at the end of the whole round, you can take that first player token from whoever has it at the minute. If multiple people play that chief card, it's whoever's furthest away clockwise from the current chief will gain it. So clockwise, the person who's last in turn order, they would gain that chief, the first player token, at the end of the round. And in the bottom right-hand side of the token is you can swap some of the nomads on the islands from one island to another. So you can you can influence the board state to move nomads around. As long as they're not reserved or someone else hasn't claimed them, you can move those nomads around on the island because you're a very important person and this is what you want them to do.
Awesome,
and that's
Ross.
a one-time ability. That little ability, you can tap that. But what happens is when you claim a nomad, the only thing, kind of one of the things I haven't mentioned yet, is when you claim a nomad from the island, like Lincoln did in the bottom right, there's these smaller islands that are connected, and you would bring new nomads into the islands, and it would be a choice based on the ones that are connected. And in this case, that's a good example of a nomad moving there, and you would bring a new nomad onto that island, and that would be one of the ways that triggers the game. And so this stack of nomads on the left-hand side, when they run out and when these smaller islands run out of people, that's the game end. So basically the game goes until it goes. If people are recruiting a lot of nomads, the game will be quicker. If people are taking their time and they're trying to put more monuments out, trying to put more settlers out there, because of the point scoring mechanics that the nomads give them, maybe the game will take a little bit longer.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ross. So at the beginning of the game, when you're setting up the nomads, are you just shuffling them all and kind of randomly placing them out?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a random placement of the nomads at the start of the game. The version that Lincoln's playing with there, it's actually got some deluxe tiles on there, which are the loose things that had the trading resources on and the spots on. So, there's a little bit of randomization with that if you've got the deluxe version, but in the base version, you're adding random nomads to the board. Everyone starts with one resource of each. Everybody starts with all of their monuments, all of their settlers, none of them are placed anywhere. So at the very start of the game, the first thing you do is you place your boat between one of these two islands. You place a monument token from your culture track on one of the nomads that's next to your boat. And then whoever's got the first player token rolls those dice. Everybody follows those dice, and that's when you start the game.
And then you just start moving. Cool. It looks awesome. How can people get Tungaru? Is it currently available?
Tungaru, it went through Kickstarter initially, and it was successful. That's why we're talking about it today. And it'll be getting to backers very soon, like over the next month. Basically, all of the backers of that Kickstarter campaign will be receiving them, and it'll go to retail after that. On the Alley Cat website, alleycatgames.com, you can still pre-order it if you want to get in that first batch of people. There's still a little bit of time to do so. Otherwise, wait until it hits your local friendly gaming store or where it is that you choose to purchase games. Shop local, people. That's what I always say.
Yep. Good point. Well, thank you, Ross, for this detailed overview of Tungaru.